Hello everybody, it's time for another lab problem set walkthrough. This time we will be doing IST769 Lab D, which is the one on minio object storage and Spark. And let's start as we always do out at the terminal by bringing up the services that we need. So if I go back and look at that doc again, I need to bring up Jupyter and minio. So Docker compose. Zoom this in a bit. Docker compose start minio Jupyter. Always start your services and then make sure they're running and then make sure they're accessible. Don't just assume they're going to work. You know what they say about assumptions. They're the termites of relationships. Just don't do that. Make sure they are up and running and they're working as expected. So let me zoom this out and I see that Jupyter's running. I don't see minio running. Oh, there it is. Minio is running as well. So they're both running. Let's double check that they're running by going here and going, because I'm on my host machine, so localhost. There's the minio console and there's Jupyter Lab. Ta-da! Everything's hunky-dory. Okay, next thing we want to do is we want to start doing the questions on the lab. So let's take a look here. We got, first one is we're going to make some buckets and then put some files in some buckets. So I guess I got to do that. All right, let's go out to, I'm here in Jupyter Lab. Let's open up a terminal. Whoops. Terminal. And I can type, this is going to be my minio client. I've already downloaded it. If you need to download it, the instructions are in the doc. They're also in the class notes. And after you download it, you have to make an alias. So MC set alias. There's an MC alias set. And I'm going to call my alias minio. And it's the server, which is minio because I am inside the container. I am not outside the container. So if it was outside the container, it's localhost. See, this is me outside the container. When I'm inside the container, it's minio. Container to container conversation, it's got to be the service name. And then the user is minio and the password is SU21. And I can do minio client, make a bucket, minio / labd. Like that. Boom, made a bucket. Let's go see if it's there. Reload. It says 3 buckets, right? Reload. Oops. There it is, labd. It says 3 buckets, but there's 4 now because it just didn't get the next one. There it is right there, labd. And if I browse it, there's nothing in labd. Let's go make some folders in the bucket. So I need to make that IP lookup folder and that logs folder. Hit the up arrow so I don't have to type everything. Logs. IP lookup. Okay. Let's go back over to the minio console. Always double check your work. And there's my folders. Now I can put my files in my folders. So I need to know where my files are, right? So if I go back here and look at this, it says I need IP lookup JSON. Where is that? That's in the datasets clickstream folder. IP lookup JSON right there. It says so in the docs. So here's how I got to copy it. Minio client copy, and then where from home Jovian, right? You see I'm hitting tab here so that I'm using the Linux shell to guess where the folder is based on what I type. And then let's see, we got data sets, clickstream, IP lookup JSON, We want to put that in minio is my alias, labd is my bucket. Inside that, I have a folder called IP lookup. Okay, and it just copied that file in there. I'm going to go to minio, check it out. There's my file. Yay! All right, let's do the next ones. So in the logs folder, I need to drop in 3 files in logs. And so I need to do that. Let's go back and let's go here. And I want to put each of these 3 files in logs. Now you can't do this with a wildcard in minio. You can't do it with a wildcard in S3. You have to copy them individually. So let's copy the first one, which is EX21. There it is, 1 log. And then let's put that not in IP lookup, but let's put that in logs. And then the next one is 2112 log. And the third one is 2113 log. So I just put them all up there. Now you're going to need all your commands so that you can hand in your work, right? So you use history. And you can get a list of all the commands that you typed and copy the relevant ones into your assignment. And I'm going to go check this on... There they are. Yay! All my files are there. Excellent. So now I can move on. I'm done with minio, and now I can do some magic inside of a Jupyter notebook. So I'm going to create a new notebook here. Let's go to the top and go to the work folder. And in here, I'm going to make a folder, file, new. And then let's do a notebook. And I'm going to rename this notebook labd. Now, what do I got to do? Let's go read the instructions. Create a new Spark notebook called labd. Write or copy or edit Spark code to set up the Spark session. So your Spark session supports minio access must include the Hadoop AWS Spark jar package. Okay, so the best way to do this is to go grab one of the examples. So I'm using minio. There's the example for minio, and here's the Spark code to connect. Now it's in 3 different cells. I want to put it in 1 cell, so I'm just going to copy this and put it in there. And then I'm going to go copy this. This is my minio config, right? This, like if it was S3, these would all be different. I don't want to use this bucket. My bucket is called labd, right? And then I also need to get my Spark init code, which is here. And I should probably double check things. So the endpoint is the S3 URL right there. The access key is minio. The secret is lab2 su2 orange. The bucket, which isn't used in the config, is labd. Okay, I'll run this. Hope for the best. Expect the worst. You get a couple of warnings. That's fine. It's downloading my jars. Run it again. And that way it just clears it out. Okay, I think I have a good Spark session here. This is question number 1. I guess I'll put a number 1 here. Number 1. Okay, what's number 2 look like? Number 2. Let's see what question number 2 looks like. Back to the doc. Write a new Spark notebook. Well, I did number 2. Darn it. That was number 2, not number 1. This is number 2. And this is number 3. Let's go back to the notebook. Write a Spark code to load the logs from minio labd logs into the data frame logs1 using Spark read text. All right, I can certainly give this a shot. Now, I am going to not get in the habit of I'll just do it. Logs1 Spark read text. Need to get S3A Where am I going? I'm going to the bucket. S3A is this config here. And what bucket am I going to? S3 bucket, right there. I could have just hard-coded this in, right? Lab D. But that's for lamos, right? You want to use a variable here. And then I want all the logs. So it's logs star.log, like that. Okay. Now, let me go back. Let me take a breath. Let me make sure it works. And, of course, because you signed up, maybe it's going to work. We'll see. It's grinding away. Oh, it worked. Okay. So here's your logs. It's got one column called value, and then you see your logs. And because you signed up for the advanced Mike Fudge, let's watch a video of him doing the homework kind of thing, might as well teach us some tricks. So when I use Spark, I never like to put in these hard-coded things. I like to use a variable. So I'm going to call this logs in. And I usually will name my variables ins and outs. Like, you know, like, so logs in is equal to that. There's a couple reasons I like to do this. One is that way all the ins and outs, like where the data comes and where the data goes, in my Spark code are easily accessible at the top of the program. The second thing, the reason I like to do this is I may take that Spark program and not have this be in the code, but have this be an environment variable, which means it's something that you set at the operating system level. And that allows me to reconfigure the program without writing the code, without rewriting the code. So instead of me having this hard-coded in here, out at the terminal, I would set what that was, and then when I run the program would just read the variables that were set at the terminal. It's kind of beyond the scope of the class, but I just want to give you my real reasons for doing this. If you ever take a class in DevOps or something like that with me, we get into that quite a bit. All right, so I think I got number 1 going. That's good, or number 3 going. So let's move on to number 4. And number 4 says, we need to remove the rows with a hash in front of them. These are comments in the web server log files. Use the filter function to do this and save the results into data frame logs to show the code and output in your screenshot. Okay. Here we go. So I've got logs 1, right? I'm going to go logs 2 is logs 1 filter. And now I need to say, give me the rows that don't start with that hash. Now, there's 3 ways you can write this. You can write this in data frame syntax, you can write it in object syntax, or you can write it in SQL syntax. If you write it in data frame or object syntax, you got to know some Python. If you don't know some Python, do it the SQL way. And the SQL way would be, well, what is the column, right? So let's just back up a bit. Logs 1 print schema. It's just got one column called value. All right, now that you know that, value like, that's how in SQL we find out if something starts with a particular value. See, all of these columns start with a pound because I check for the value. Like, this is SQL, folks. This is nothing you don't already know. So I need to negate this, so value not like, and then I get the rows I want. Okay, so that's how you do it in SQL. If you want to torture yourself and learn how you do it in Python, you would do it something like this. And then you need to say logs 1 value starts with pound. Starts with is a Python function that applies to string types. And we're assuming that this value is a string type. And then that will give you that. And if you need to negate it, the way you negate these is with the tilde. And now it's negated. So if you want to do this with data frames, it would be similar. Okay, so that just gives you an example of how to do it in code versus how to do it in SQL. Okay, that's number 4. Let's see what number 5 has in store for us. Number 5. Oh, one little pro tip. If you don't remember how to use filter, you can always say help logs1 filter and get some help on it. And it says filter condition. Okay, sometimes it's not very helpful, but you know, it does give you some examples on how to do it. You can also you know, go look up the docs yourself, but it's nice to be able to use the docs within the notebook and not have to jump out to a web browser. All right, let's go on to number 5. So number 5 says, write your logs back to minio, use the text format, and call the file logs no header and include a screenshot. Okay, so let's do that. That should be pretty easy. That's going to look like this: logs2.write text, and then I need to give it. I'm going to say out logs, or what did I say up here? Logs in. Logs in. Okay, so this is going to be logs out. Logs out, and that's going to be an F string of S3A, then my bucket, then we're going to put it in logs no header. That's where we want to put it. And we want to write our text to logs out. Okay. And it does it. And now the only way you know if it worked is to go look at it on minio, right? Let's not be naive about this. And there it is, logs no header, and there's my output. Okay, so it worked. So I took those 3 files and combined them into one file, cleaned them up. All right, what next bit of torture does Mike Fudge have for Mike Fudge? Let's go find out. Read in the logs no header this time using CSV to delimit it on a space into logs 3. Okay? Add headers, blah, 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 blah. Let's first get the sucker to read in, then we'll add the headers. All right, so logs 3, spark, read, CSV, and then we're going to read in the logs out. I like to start here and then figure out what the hell I need to change to get it to delimit correctly. Okay, so it all comes into one column called C0. That's not what I want. I want it to delimit on a space. So I need to add an option to do that. Option sep is a space, right? I don't want to separate it on a comma. I want to separate it on a space. See, now I get a bunch of columns, see? See that? Because I separated it on a space. Maybe it would help if I showed you what it looks like. Right, so now each of these values is in its own column. Date, time, server IP, method, URL, username, port. I don't know what that one is. I don't remember. Client IP. This is a pretty standard log format. Most logs are delimited by a space, by the way. All right. Now, couple things. I always set a header, and I always set infer schema. I do this out of habit. In this case, there's no header. And I always set infer schema because I want this to come in as a number if I can. I have to have a pretty darn good reason to not use infer schema. And that pretty darn good reason might be it's a massive CSV file and I don't want to take 2 passes on it. But other than that, that's what I need. Now, what did that buy me, by the way? If I print schema now, some of these are not string types. Some of these are integer types. See that? That's what that infer schema gets you. Not everything will come in as a string. Some things will come in as integers or doubles. Unfortunately, it does not parse dates. So you see that the date and the time columns, which were the first two columns, they still come in as string. Again, you signed up to do the walkthrough, so you get not only the answers, but a tutorial to go with it. Sorry. Or maybe I'm not sorry. I don't know. All right, now I'm supposed to rename all these columns. There's 14 of them. There's 15 of them, C0 through C14. And the easiest way to rename them is with, I could use with column renamed, but I got to do that for each one. I got to say, dot with column renamed. And then I would say C0. The new column is going to be called date. I could do that, right? But that's going to use a lot of with column renamed. So rather than use that, I'm going to use the 2df function, which requires me to rename every column. So I have to rename all the columns. Now I'm lazy. Actually, I'm not lazy. I'm efficient. Programmers are never lazy. We're always efficient. And with efficient, I'm going to copy these. And I'm just going to paste them in here like this. Ta-da! And then I'm going to put quotes around them. That's one column. That's C0. That's C1. That's C2. That's C3. C4. This is C5. C6. And C7. C8. C9, C10, C11, and I don't have C12, C13, or C14. Let's leave them out and see what happens, shall we? So when I run this, I get an error, and if I look at the error, it says the number of columns don't match. Okay, and what that's telling you is you've got 15 columns in, and you're giving me 12 columns out. Can't do that. So I need to name the last 3 columns. I don't know. I'm not going to use them. So I'm just going to give them names like, I don't know, A, B, C. I got to name them something. They're not going to be part of my processing, but I need to name them something. So now they're there, A, B, C. See that right there? The instructions say that I don't want those columns. Right? I only want these columns. So I need to pass the 2df into a select to just pare it down to the columns I want. And of course, I'm efficient, so I'm certainly not going to type that in. You might be wondering, how did I highlight like that without using the mouse? I hold Shift down on the keyboard, the Shift key, and then use the arrow keys. And that's a quick way to do that. Right, there we go. Now I've got my table exactly the way I want. Okay, that's number 6. Just cruising right along through this. No big deal. All right, let's see what we got here. Number 7, let's handle the IP address lookup data. Write Spark code to load IP lookup JSON from minio into the data frame IPS1. Okay, show the first 10 rows and print the schema, yada, yada, yada. Okay. This is number 7. So IPS1 is Spark read JSON. Oh, I don't want to do this, right? I want to do, this is going to be IP lookup in. And it's going to be I'm going to copy this because I'm lazy. It's going to be that, but they're not there. Where are they? They're The IP lookup stuff is in IP lookup, and it's IP lookup JSON. IP lookup, JSON. Ta-da! And then we want to read IP lookup in. And let's IPS.1 print schema. Okay. Oh, that worked just too well. Normally, when you read in from JSON data, you might get an error. And when you get the error, it's because the JSON has been formatted. And when it's formatted, you need to add option multi-line true. How do I know all of these options? Well, they're in the PowerPoint deck. There's a link out to the Spark docs where you can read all about the different options for all the different formats. And again, I cannot teach you all of them. I can't. It's impossible. I can only teach you where to find them so that when it doesn't load the way you want, you can try different options to fix the problem. That is the Spark way of life. Okay, I did not need multi-line in this case, but what the heck, let's add it anyway. All right, let's do number 8. That's print schema, by the way. If I show it, you'll see I can see the data. And I have some nested data in there. Geography, city, state, city, country, state, location, latitude, longitude. Okay. So we're going to clean that up probably in number 8 is my guess. Let's see what number 8 says. Number 8. It says, we need to flatten the nested JSON data. Use the select function with dot notation to do this, saving the data frame as IPS2. This is pretty easy to do. This should be pretty simple. JSON transformations work out really nice. IPS2. This should be IPS1 select. And let's go with IP first. Then let's do geography. And I forgot what these are, and they don't show up here, so I need print schema again. Or else I have no chance of doing this right. Geography city. See that? Geography.city. I'll stop there for now. Good practice is to not do the show on the same line. That's supposed to be a dot, not a comma, Mike. There you go. And not resolve geography underscore city given these columns. That's what it tells you. There we go. IP city. So I got to keep going here. Geography state. State. Country. And location. Location lat. And by the way, I am using 100%. I am using SQL notation. Maybe I want to use object notation for the last one. So it would be ips1.location.lng. And there you go. Now, when I use the object notation, you'll see it doesn't call it LNG. It calls it location.lng. If that bothers me, I can just put dot alias. And then alias this to be whatever I want. Just a little pro tip for you. Okay, and then I have what I need. And then there you go. I think that's number 8. So take that data, flatten it, right? So if you are looking at 7 again, and I show you that, this is not flattened. It's nested, and now I've flattened the data. So you almost can sense what's going to come next. In order to do my analytics and figure out where my web visitors are coming from, I am going to join this table, which has the IP addresses and where they're located on the planet, with this table, which has my website visitors. And I'm not going to use the server IP. That would be dumb, right? That's the server doesn't move. It's the client IP that I want to match. So this client IP of 215.82.23.2, that's somewhere in here, hopefully. Now, not all of these IPs are there. So I will probably just want to do a regular old join and drop off the ones that don't IP lookup. I'm just surmising what's going to happen. Let's see. Let's read about number 9 and find out what it says. Now join the two data frames together on their business key. In this case, it's going to be IP address. Making the new data frame comb1 provide a schema and sample of the first few rows in your screenshot. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to say comb1 is, and the join, maybe I forgot how to do a join. So help, pick a data frame, IPS2 dot join. Give me help on that. It says I need an other, which is another data frame, and then I need an on, which is how I join them together, and then I need a how, which is, full outer, inner, left, right, cross join, etc. Which I think I want an inner join here. So let's give it a whirl. comb1 IPS2 dot join, and what data frame am I joining to? It's this one here, logs3 on, and I want to say IPS2 dot IP equal, double equal because this is Python, and that's going to be joined to logs3 dot, I think it's client IP, but I'll check it. Client IP. Client. Let me zoom that in. Client IP. The how is it's optional by default. If you don't say how, it uses inner, but I'll just put it here anyway. Okay, comb1.print schema, just to show you. Now we've got a whole bunch of columns: IP, client IP, server IP. Okay, got them all in there. And then I could do com1 show, and I get the IP, Columbus, Ohio. That's the requests made from Columbus, Ohio. And if I went down far enough, I don't know, show 100, I'd probably get some that aren't in Columbus, Ohio. There we go. These are in New York. Okay, so you get an idea of what web traffic's going on. This is this is the hello world of big data analytics, by the way, processing web logs. it is really, the hello world, the classic, the quintessential example of big data analytics is let's see what our website visitors are doing, and let's enrich that data by taking the IP address of the client and geocoding it, and let's take the user agent and map that to an operating system and a browser. See, it says Mozilla 5.0 Windows. You can use that to say, oh, this person's on Windows 95 or Windows 11, and they have Mozilla or Firefox or Brave. You can figure all that information out from the user agent, or at least approximate it anyway from the user agent. And then you can use the server URI to figure out what they're doing. Like, they went to a feedback forum. They went to a about us. They asked for help. They wanted to start a chat. You should be able to use these points to do that. And that's the basics of back-end web analytics. And where back-end web analytics is more advantageous than, like, the Google JavaScript analytics like you get when you use, most of these tools nowadays have a JavaScript plugin that you put in that does the analytics. Google Analytics does this. The people that have JavaScript disabled, you also get a consistent timestamp that's used, not the timestamp that's on the client, but the timestamp that's on the server. So there are some advantages to using web analytics. You also can't hide from server-oriented web analytics. You go to that site, you're logged. Doesn't matter what kind of protections you try to put on yourself on the browser end. Doesn't matter. You just got logged. The only thing you can do is try to wrap yourself in some layers of obfuscation through Tor or VPNs or things like that. Anyway, it's not a class in cybersecurity, but it's good to know how this stuff works. It's really important. Oh, the other thing that you get valuable out of the logs is this status code, which tells you if it succeeded or failed or was redirected, etc. Checking your failure rates is important if you're going to administer a website. All right, let's see what number 10 has in store for us. Can't wait to find out. Write the COM1 data frame in Parquet format back to minio in clean logs. Okay, we can do this. So here we go. COM1 write mode, and I want to do an overwrite. That way, if I write it more than once, it just rewrites it. And write in Parquet format. And now I need to put in my out logs. This would be combined logs out. That. And let's say combined logs out is going to be my F string again. S3A is my accessor, which says that this is object storage, and then my bucket is S3 bucket. Making this a variable makes it very easy to change the bucket. And then the path in the bucket is going to be whatever they said. I think it was cleaned logs Parquet. Probably should be consistent here and call this cleaned logs. What did the directions say? That's what I really want to know. Did I use it? Give it a name in the directions? Clean dash logs. All right. Well, I should really be hyper consistent here. Clean dash logs Parquet. Cleaned logs out. That's fine. She's written clean logs Parquet. And there's my Parquet file right there. You can see how much smaller. Look at that, 14 KB for a Parquet file, right? And the raw data is 3K plus 312K. So the Parquet format does compress the data and gives us the ability to save on some space. Okay. Now, that looks like the whole homework, which is great. Let's do it's bonus time. Let's do a bonus. So normally when you do this batch-oriented ETL like we did here, right? This is basically an ETL job. I end up doing it exactly the way you see it, where I write it in little bits like this. And then the last thing I do is I combine it so that it'll run all in one cell. That way I can kind of productionalize it, and then when more logs are added, I just rerun this script, and it recreates the Parquet file that someone can use for analytics. So let's do that. Usually I do that right in this cell so that I can just, with a scheduler, take this code, put it in a Python file, and then just run it. And then it'll just, do everything. But for simplicity's sake, since we don't have a scheduler here and we're not going to ever have a scheduler, let's just get it all to run in this cell right here. So the first thing I like to do when combining these is get all my variables going. So I need my ins and outs. So logs in, that's one of them, right? And then I had logs out, and that was another one. And then I had IP lookup in. And then I also had cleaned out. And I'm just going to do this. And I had cleaned out. And I gotta go to the top. Scroll, 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 scroll. And there we go. So this is when you're building your script, it's nice to have these all in variables so that you can see them all at the top of the program. And if you need to change the location of anything, you can do that quickly and easily here. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply my transformations, right? So I usually don't rewrite them, but I like to think about the big picture, right? So the first thing I did was I removed this header, right? So I read my logs in, right? I read my logs in. Then I filtered out the header. Then I decided to write this back out to logs out like this, something like that. And I probably should put the mode in here, right? Mode overwrite. So that is, step one. I'm going to run it. Okay, and I get a boo-boo here. Okay. Oh, I have logs 1 in here. So this is a really good point, right? I can't use this approach if I'm going to chain them all together like this. I got to use the SQL approach instead. There's other ways to do this too, but I'm just going to do it this way. Just a value, not like. This is why you have to know all the approaches, by the way. There, that's better. Let's see if that works. All right, I'm gonna overwrite. There, that works. Okay, and every time I run it, it does it. So like tomorrow, somebody puts more logs in minio. Like maybe I have one batch job that adds logs to minio. I can do this to get the headers off every time, and then this can run every day. Right now, if you don't like stacking them like this, you could just, use your line continuation character in Python. Dot. Like this. Sort of gives it a little cleaner look. I always like to comment what I'm doing, or maybe I'll print stripping headers. Always important to maybe log some information so that you know what's happening. Okay, we're stripping headers. Okay, what do we do next? So what do we do next is we read in that file. Where was it? We read in that file here. And we, add these columns and select what we want, right? And that gives us this. Okay, so I'm going to actually take all of this and I'm going to bring it right up here. Do this. And this probably makes sense to put in a variable because I'm going to have to join it. And I'm going to need it in a variable, right? So I'm just going to call this logs. Let's just run this, make sure it all works. Okay, stripping headers. And so this, I'll call this one print loading stripped logs. And then we need to load up the IP lookups, right? We need to do this. Right, so I'm going to need this. I'll just call this, I don't know, I'll call this IP. And then onto that, we applied a transformation, right, where we flatten the columns. So where did we do that? Down here, right here. You can see I've done this before. I should say I have written many ETLs before. And we're going to do this. And again, this IP S will not work. So I need to just use location long. That. Okay. Let's see if this works. Let me put a print here. Print. What is happening here? This is loading IP lookups. I like our ellipsis. There we go. Stripping headers, loading strip logs, loading IP lookups. Okay. Now the last steps, we're going to print join data frames and save as Parquet. I think I could do that all in one step. We'll find out. All right. I guess I could do the combined. Combined is, I guess I'll say join data frames. And then we'll have another one, save as Parquet. And the combined one is down here, right here. I'm going to have to manipulate this a bit, but that's fine. And then I'm going to put that up here and manipulate it to make sense. It's going to be IP join logs on IP logs client IP. Okay, and now I got to write the save as Parquet. Let's go down to the bottom. Right there. And that's the way you do it. And you know, it's this is what I like about notebooks is you can like kind of ad hoc it, and then when you're done, you can like kind of productionalize it. So you know, this is the only cell I need to run to do my ETL. I run this one first, and then this one. Boom, does it all. Stripping headers, loading logs, and save as Parquet. And I go to minio, and boom, there it is, right? And just to show you that it works, you know, delete these out. Boom, you know. Add a new log, whatever. Boom. Okay, it's gone, right? There's nothing there. Okay. Get rid of these too. Boom. Okay. Now I deleted out everything except for the raw data. So let's suppose, you know, we get some new logs come in, you know, new logs come in, and then, oh, it's time to run my job. Okay. Boom, boom. Done, right? And there you have it. And it's there for, you know, your marketing department to use in Tableau or whatever it is that they're going to do. Okay? And that's basically how you want to build an ETL pipeline in Spark. You're gonna do something like that. It's a really great tool for doing that. Right? That's the whole homework.